This is Dr. David Bugay, and we have the privilege with us to have Laura Leon, Design Studio, the founder of it, and she is an expert on all facets of branding with a primary focus on real estate and hospitality. But the truth be told, branding is branding, and if you get the basics on it, you really have a good idea as to what you need to do and complete. She is an expert on that. She will explain who she is, and I think you'll be impressed. I certainly was. So with that, Laura, why don't you go ahead and tell us all about branding?
Hi, David. Thank you so much for introducing me. Hi, everyone. My name is Laura Leanne Williams, and I have Laura Leanne Design Studio. I'm an art director and graphic designer, and I love helping my clients with all their branding and design needs, especially when it comes to print and digital platforms. So my little slogan is every brand has a style, and think of me as your brand stylist. And I'm here in the Chicago area, by the way. And well, as on the next slide, you'll see that we're going to talk about language and communication. So does anyone here speak a different language? You know, have you learned another language growing up? Maybe you're on a second or third language now. Do you speak that daily, and do you use that to communicate with others, or do you like learning it for fun? Also, do you practice? But you know, either way, over 6,000 languages exist today. And we can see how languages not only can be a barrier sometimes, maybe when we're traveling or trying to communicate with someone else, but we can see how these language barriers, you know, can affect us in our everyday communication. So with really quality branding, and you can have good communication. So on our next slide, we're going to talk about, you know, just a little fun fact, and it's also a personal fun fact, but I'm adopted from China. So my parents adopted me from Nanning, China in 1997, and they worked really hard to study Mandarin before they came to get me. They wanted to learn, you know, so they could communicate with me, with the embassy, and, you know, the people of China. But when they got there, they realized that Cantonese was the main language. So it's okay, and I appreciate their effort and all their hard work in taking the classes, but they realized that communication barrier, you know, it was a little difficult, but they really just wanted to be able to communicate essentially. That was the main goal. So that's just a little example of how that's affected me personally. But, you know, now that, you know, I'm here and always grown up here in the States, it's not an issue, but just showing that they had that, you know, passion to try to communicate with the people of China was so important. So on our next slide, you know, do you ever feel that, you know, family or friends, or maybe even your clients, I know this is an entrepreneurship class, you kind of ever feel frustrated that, you know, maybe there's a language barrier or maybe even an industry barrier? So I like to tell my clients, you know, they're a pro in their industry and they know it best. So when we look at both languages and, you know, industry barriers, it can be a difficult way to communicate with one another. So again, by having that really clear understanding of your branding and your guidelines and making sure you're connecting with your target audience, that will help a lot. So as we move on to the next slide, we're going to talk about how communication design, you know, is seen both in language, of course, but and graphic design. And then here on our next slide, just this will give you a general overview of communication design. So this is an example of a client of mine actually, and they're called the Beer Temple here in Chicago, and they're a top rated bar, and now they're doing virtual tastings because of the pandemic, but they had no collateral or marketing pieces for that. So I created a very nice guide, you know, for virtual tastings. So that helps their clients, you know, understand what they're doing now and how they can still continue to have tastings, but in a fun way, but of course, virtually via Zoom. So communication design here, as you can see, it's through many different facets, and we'll kind of dive into them here on the next slide. So here we'll talk about in a general sense, just the 9 ways and the types of design. So this is just an example of communication design too, but in a more maybe fun way that you wouldn't think about. This is actually a save the date for one of my best friends who's getting married. So again, the communication of just, you know, sharing what the date and where it's going to be and who it's for. And so again, of course, adding your fun style and making it very, you know, branded to them and the couple. But as we go to the next one, we'll talk more about art and illustration. So here's an example I did for social media for actually a university in Chicago. They wanted a curated social media branding just for the year of the ox, which was this year. And, again, through, using those different elements of design, we were able to, create a very specific yet, eye-catching design for the community of the university. And then our next one here is typography. So typography is so important. It really, obviously is not only text, but especially when you're working on a logo design. So for example, here's a client of mine. They have this big annual gala that's a big fundraiser for this Catholic school and Night of the Lion. And we really dove down into all these different branding ideas, but we ended up with this one. So you can kind of see here on the brand style guide how that's used throughout each piece. We have the primary logo, the secondary logo, and of course the favicon, which is more of your icon. And by looking at the color palettes and the typography, we were able to create a very complete brand that communicates that.
So Laura, just to clarify, it looks like you spend a lot of time in dialogue and showing how about this, yes. And then, well, so you spend a lot of time talking to your clients to make certain it's exactly what they want.
Yeah, thanks, David, for mentioning that. Exactly. There's a lot of communication, not just in the design, but you're right, between me and the client. And there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of meetings, and we really need to dive deep into what they're looking for. Because I think a lot of clients, they know what they want, but they don't know how to describe it. And it is a hard thing because it's so visual. So by showing multiple examples, we're able to finally, narrow it down to the final is what you're seeing now. But you're right, there's many iterations, many steps. Yeah.
I see. Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Our next one here is, graphic design's another form. So here's just a postcard design I did actually for this spring, and it's a landscaping company, and they do more high-end landscaping, fancy pavers and, outdoor kitchens and living spaces. So being able to, again, help them communicate to their really high-end clientele, we were able to send out, a mass mailing of postcards and communicate with people that way since they've been home lately with the pandemic. And now they're getting ready for summer as well. Yeah, and as we move on to our next one, we have, the writing and editing. That's also a form of communication design. I do not do the copywriting and editing. I usually outsource that. I'm not more a creative writer, but I'm more on the visual side of things. So I definitely bring in pros that are good in their field, and we work together as a team, and we have, finalized copy, and then I get to apply it to website design. So for example, this is actually a nonprofit. It's a Polish Catholic nonprofit here in Chicago, and I was able to do their website design for them.
So pretty much a large part of your job is getting good communication and then getting them to use the brand. Like in this case, on the screen, you can see in the left-hand side of the screen, they have a logo. And so they put the logo under letterhead. They put the logo on their memos. They put the logo on their website. They put the logo on all the email footers. So that's a constant that they have to always have. So you have to actually almost be intuitive to find out what they really love. And then once they fall in love with it, then get them to use it everywhere.
Exactly. Thanks, David. Yeah, we actually also worked on all their branding for them as well. They actually just wanted to do a website redesign and then realized, well, if we're doing it, we should probably just, it hasn't been updated since 1971. They didn't even have digital files back then, of course. So we redid everything. And you're right, exactly. It's applied to every piece, printed and digital. So the voice and tone when they're present.
Okay. Super. Okay.
Yeah, our next slide here we have is interactive design. So I do not design apps. I'll be honest with you, I do not design apps, but that is another form of interactive design. So thinking about how someone's using an app and of course how that's going to be coded and designed is so important. But I do love the user interface of design, really understanding how someone's gonna, come and use an app, and maybe, are they first gonna go to the menu or a certain button, or how are they gonna check out if it's, a shopping e-commerce related, but that's another form of design as well. Okay. Here on our next slide, we have information architecture. So really understanding that hierarchy. Here I did a website design again for actually a real estate attorney. And so here we had to really talk about, hey, how do you want it formatted? Not just the design, but how's the hierarchy going to look? You know, you want case studies, you know, you're going to show your services, you're going to show more about yourself, maybe testimonials. So, you know, understanding that communication as well and how someone's going to use it, whether it's on a phone or on a desktop computer, you really got to think about that type of design as well.
So you part of your job is you actually sequenced what the customer sees.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, and I love actually telling my clients, since I'm not a pro in your industry like real estate attorney, I say, hey, I'm coming at you looking from your client's perspective, and maybe I don't understand a fancy term that they're using, and I let my clients know that just so they know, hey, that's not common to the normal person. So maybe you want to make it more easy for, you know, a client who's never in your world to understand as their first time visiting your website, because you really want to think about how you're going to attract that, you know, audience, especially the brand new person that has no clue who you are and they're googling you, and that's the first thing they see, and they're gonna judge that for the, you know, first couple seconds. So yeah, exactly.
So a big part of your job is you step out of being a branding expert and you step into the shoes of being a client,
Yeah.
and that then you ask the questions that a client might ask.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think it helps everyone, right, strip away from all the making it look beautiful, but really let's make sure the content is really on point. So it's exactly functional, but also understandable for everyone. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. And then our next one we have here is visual identity. So right, looking at all those visual elements that will work together again and unified to communicate again whatever you're trying to convey to your target audience. So here this is a hospitality group and it's all about tourism and travel. So again, you can see the brand style guide that I created for this client and all the different types of logos, but you know how it all works together essentially.
Nice.
Yeah. And then we can, on the next slide, we'll look at data visualization. So a lot of people aren't just all about pretty pictures and stuff, and some people want the hardcore facts. So it's important to be able to nicely visualize a lot of data in one sitting, but you don't want to overdo it and overwhelm the client either. So here, this is an example of a postcard design I did for a top team of real estate brokers. So here we were, you know, helping convey what all these numbers mean here and conveying it through a nice chart, because people love charts. Whether they can understand them or not is another thing, but people love show me the data, right? So you want to help this real estate team, of course, prove why you should work with them, and that again, you know, this is the time to sell or buy, depending on what you're showing in your postcard. But you know, I love helping my clients be able to communicate a lot of data too, and just make it easy and bite size to understand.
So you're actually creating a postcard for them to send out to potential people to list.
Correct. Mass mailings. Yeah. So we send out like thousands and then they target the zip codes they're in for, you know, of course, that they're trying to hit. But yeah, whether you're a seller or a buyer, but you know, right, realtors always need to be out and about and showing their, you know, around 24/7. So I love helping teams really, again, present a very professional front if you've never worked with them before.
Well, this is pretty unique because normally I'm used to seeing pictures of pretty houses with realtors. You're showing raw data as to why we do a good job.
Yeah, so we switch it up. This team actually, I had a great time working with them. We do fun ones too. She'll even take the calendar of, you know, the park district. She's in a very big zip code actually that involves 2 zip codes. And she puts one of her main spring postcards as me just organizing the whole calendar list full of events for the summer, because she wants to be a resource, not just, look, I sold a house, but we're also showing she's engaged in the community, as well as here in this example, she has hard driven, you know, data and facts about the market and statistics of real estate. So I think it's really important to show that variety, that you really know your area, you're engaged in your community, but you're everywhere. You know?
Okay.
Yeah.
So community engagement is part of the branding, sounds like as well.
I think it should be, especially if you're a local small business. How are you to connect with maybe the people around you if you're not even showing you're involved, you know, whether it's in, your local community of just eating out and dining and supporting local restaurants. I myself even try to do that even more. And I show that through my Instagram account and supporting local businesses, and I'll tag them and help them as well. But we all have to help each other.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so our next one, we have information and knowledge. So again, kind of breaking down, whether it's a map or an infographic. This is also for a commercial real estate broker. And he runs actually the top in the Midwest for his business. But, he's trying to highlight and sell a property on a very busy road. So what are we going to do? We're going to highlight all the traffic that comes up and down that really, busy highway. And we're going to show the main things, the banks. So I help him pull out really important things on the map, because when you're selling commercial, I have to kind of, again, put on my commercial realtor helmet hat instead and switch over, because we're not selling residential anymore. This is commercial, and we got to help people see the value, right? And we got to help them, again, visually see that. And I think you can do that well through a map, especially for commercial real estate.
Okay,
Yeah.
super.
And then our next one, we have, essentially, that's right, we're already at 9. So here, essentially, right, I tell my clients that you are the guide in your industry. And so as an entrepreneur in your class, you're going to be the guide in whatever you're trying to sell and communicate to your clients. So thank you so much, David. And, I hope everyone was able to learn something from this.
I think so. What would you see as probably the most critical thing? Let's say somebody's starting out. We have several people that literally plan on starting their own business. Some want to get a franchise. Some want to actually just start their own business. What would be the advice that you would give somebody that has a low budget to do first for branding?
Okay, so yeah, when it comes to, I guess, thinking about the first part you mentioned, franchise, usually if you're with a franchise, you do have headquarters somewhere located, maybe, and then usually they have marketing. So they want everything to come through them. So that does save you a lot of hassle on the branding side of things. But it is important to know, you should make sure you are able to ask them, hey, I understand your branding guidelines by corporate and headquarters, but where can I be creative in my own way, right? Because if you're going to be local to your community, you need to make sure, the headquarters is fine with you being maybe a little different in some areas on social media or colors and whatnot. But when it comes to just starting your own from scratch, I really think just simply start, of course, with, your mission and values. Really think about what that means to you. And you can actually Google and find questionnaires online just that are free, but kind of ask yourself, what am I, right? Who's my target audience? And I would try to actually, this is what I tell all my clients, choose 3 words so you don't overwhelm yourselves. What are your 3 main words for your brand and how they represent you, whether it's, thinking of the senses and taste and smell and being really creative in that way? What are your 3 words? And then really write those down and, keep those, but always refer to those. So, that helps you, because it's really hard to be like, oh, I have all these adjectives list what I want to be. And it can be overwhelming and confusing for yourself, but also maybe a client. So when you narrow down and make a really good game plan, that can help you. And once you've established that, I think then you can look at colors and all the fun things of, different fonts and stuff. But really hone in on what are your 3 key words that define you and your brand and your business and what that goal is that you're trying to achieve.
Okay, super. Well, thank you very much. You've been a super help to us, and you provided a lot of really deep insights, and it probably was pretty casual to you, but for us, this is really phenomenal. So Laura, I want to thank you on behalf of our students. You really gave us a nice boost in the arm. So thank you ever so much.
Yes,
Round of applause, yay!
Thank you so much for connecting with me on LinkedIn, David. I appreciate it. And I hope we can still stay connected.
Oh yeah, for sure. All right.
Okay.
Take care. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye.